Susan Schlinker. I'm one of the HDR Partnership Officers within the Graduate Research Education and Development team, and I co-coordinate the Higher Degree Research Internship program at QT. It's my absolute pleasure to be here today to chat with you about HDR internships, and I'm joined by the lovely Ivy Chen, who has very kindly offered to help me with the workshop. She will be putting some links into the chat as we go through, so feel free to copy and paste them into a Word doc so that you have all of those resources that you can look at while we're going through the workshop and then after the workshop as well. And I'm also joined by Audrey, who has just completed an internship with the Office of the Queensland Chief Scientist. And I'm excited to let you know that Audrey will be sharing her experience on internship with us a little bit later in the presentation. I'll just start with some basic housekeeping. I know we're all Zoom experts now, but this session is recorded, so feel free to keep your mic and your camera off if you would prefer that, but you're also very welcome to have them on. It's always lovely to see faces as you're presenting. And also we have the chat function. So during the workshop, if you're anything like me, yes, we will have a designated Q&A session at the end of the workshop, but I tend to find if I don't ask the question then and there, I tend to forget it. And if you're the same, feel free to pop your questions into the chat as we go through, and we can answer all the questions at the end of the session or as we go through if I can multitask in that way. I would also really like to acknowledge the owners, the traditional owners of the lands where QT now stands, Turrbal and Yagara, paying respect to their elders' laws, customs and creation spirits, and recognising that these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning, and also acknowledging the very important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play both within the QT community and the broader community as well. So if you are zooming in from another country within Australia, I'd really encourage you to pop the First Nations owners' names of the lands that you're zooming in from into the chat, and then that way we can all learn a little bit more about First Nations owners. So let's get into HDR internships. Here's a brief map on where we're going today. I'm going to be talking about the benefits of HDR internships, what a HDR internship is and how to secure one, because there's a couple of different ways. We're going to hear from Audrey, who has undertaken a HDR internship, and she'll share her experience with you. And then, pardon me, finding out what's involved in a HDR internship, as well as preparation tips for internship interview and application, and then also let you know about our additional training and support available with a Q&A session at the end. But I would really like to start you off with this question. Whenever I start something, I like to start with the end in mind, and the same goes for today's workshop. So I'd just like you to think, okay, at the end of this session in an hour, hour and a half's time, what would you like to walk away with? What would you like to get out of this session? And I'd really invite you to pop it into the chat now so that I can have a look, and then I can tailor the workshop to some of your thoughts and requests. So feel free to pop it into the chat. I'll just give it a minute or so, and I'll look back at the chat after I've spoken through this next slide, and I can take your requests into consideration. So as I mentioned, I'm from the Graduate Research Education and Development team. And if you haven't heard of GRED before, we are sort of a sibling to the Graduate Research Centre. So they look after all of the candidature and admissions and examinations. And GRED offers optional training and development for higher degree research students with really two key objectives. The first one is to help HDRs complete their thesis, and we have dedicated language and learning support in Kerry and Tash, who offer that service. And then our other objective is to also help equip HDRs for life after their degree. And that's where industry engagement really comes into the piece. So offering industry internships and other industry engagement opportunities, it's a really amazing way and valuable way for you to broaden your experience so that you have more experience post-graduation and you're able to confidently apply for positions both in academia and in industry. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We also have, if you haven't seen it before, the really fabulous HDR skills assessment tool. And I think Ivy's put the link in the chat for you. This is great to go to. I remember I ran into a couple of ex-PhD students. So they had completed their PhDs, and I ran into them at an industry event a few months back. And they actually said to me, I remember we got given that HDR skills assessment tool and we did it, and it pointed to some areas that perhaps we could invest our time to improve on, but we didn't realize how excellent those recommendations were until we graduated, until we got our jobs post-graduation, and then we actually saw how the skills assessment tool was trying to broaden our skill set and experience and to make us well-rounded for industry as well as academia. So that was their words, not mine. If you haven't checked it out, I would really recommend that you do so. And I'm just going to have a really quick look in the chat. Thanks to everyone for putting your thoughts in there. Tara has said, just more detail about the whole process and how HDR internships work. Tara, I am very pleased to let you know we will definitely cover that today. And then Sagar, hello Sagar, is here and has said, I would like to learn about internship opportunities and the process and experience we can gain from an internship, which can help with our career. We will definitely cover both of those today, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. Before we start, I'm going to give you a little bit of a taster of what an industry internship might look like and the experience and the value of undertaking one. So this is a short video from PhD candidate Sarah Dillon, and I hope you enjoy.
I'm Sarah Dillon, and my PhD research looks at international entrepreneurs and their emotions and how the ways that they manage their emotions affects their decision making. And this is important because we know a lot of small businesses fail, and if we can help entrepreneurs make better decisions, we can help fewer businesses fail. So the internship was with QUT's Centre for the Digital Economy, and the project was a sort of commercial consultancy type project for a government agency. And we were tasked with trying to understand how different stakeholders in Queensland dealt with and engaged with the digital economy. We had to speak to, not-for-profits, community groups, volunteer-based organisations, businesses, big ones, small ones, manufacturing services, and really gain an understanding of how they were engaging with the digital economy and what they needed from the digital economy. There were 3 main reports. One of them sort of addressed some of the questions that we had been asked to look at directly, and I suppose was a lot more strategic. Another report looked at just some of the general feedback and concerns and trends that we could see emerging in the space based on our analysis of what other digital economies around the world were doing. And then there was another piece that looked at more broadly, how do communities, how do people, how does society engage with government and with government guidance and regulations and the different tools that we have to help people. Part of what we really were tasked with was running these workshops that were co-designed with the government partner. In that way, part of our role really was to help the partner gain that taste themselves directly from these different stakeholder groups, so that our reports weren't just PDFs. We'd really helped the partner understand what was going on as a whole. I think professionally, I've definitely got a better understanding of where my PhD and the skills that I've acquired during the PhD, where that fits in the bigger picture of industry. But also more broadly, how research can inform business, how research can inform society, how research can really make a difference and, move some of the levers and make change in the ways that, we often want to see. Here I was, on the one hand, you're in sell yourself mode, when you do an interview. And then on the other hand, you're like, well, now I've got to do what I've just, said I can do. And, matching up your behaviors and what you're delivering with what you've said you can, it can be a little bit intimidating. But then when you can do that, it feels incredible. Like, you really realize that what the PhD gives you, it's not just the piece of paper, it's so much more. And I think in that way, personally, it's helped me become the professional I wanted to become and the human I wanted to become by doing the PhD. And I don't think I would have seen that quite as tangibly if I hadn't done the internship. Having been through the whole internship process, I can wholeheartedly recommend other PhD students give this a go. Initially, I wasn't sure about doing an internship because I come to my PhD with a number of years of industry experience already. It sort of unlocked understanding that allowed me to make more of my PhD somehow. I would definitely recommend PhD students get in there and, have a look and make an internship for yourself happen. I'm Sarah.
I filmed that interview with Sarah last year, and you know what? I never get sick of that video. I think she made so many great points, and I really appreciated how she said that doing an internship helped her see how her research fit into the bigger picture of industry. And I hope that that's one of the things that you'll experience when you undertake your internship as well. So let's start with this very basic question: what is industry? And when I first started in my role nearly 3 years ago, I remember I had a student who said, I'm not interested in industry because I don't want to work in advanced manufacturing. So I thought, okay, let's be more specific about what industry is, and the types of industry that you can undertake an internship with. So I'm pleased to tell you it's not advanced manufacturing. It's not. Industry actually refers to any potential end user of research that's including but not limited to businesses, government. So you just heard Sarah was working with a government partner, government business enterprises, non-government organizations, not-for-profit groups, and community organizations. So I'd love you to put your thinking hat on again now and to pop into the chat. Is there an industry type, so of the ones that are listed, or maybe another one that's not listed, but is there an industry type that you're hoping to gain experience with by undertaking an internship with during a degree? And I'd love if you could pop that into the chat, because that will help me know what you're looking for. And so you also heard in Sarah's video that she said she initially wasn't sure if a HDR internship was for her because she already had a number of years of industry experience behind her. And so I think why undertake a HDR internship is a very valid question. And I'm pleased to let you know that the HDR internships are actually really important, irrespective of your intended career path into either academia or industry, or as we see quite commonly, often, graduates of higher degree research will engage in both academia and industry, and perhaps, jump back and forth over the course of their career. So rest assured, they're really important, irrespective of which avenue that you're going into. And they help you develop research articulation skills, industry experience and skills, research impact metrics, practical application of your skills in the real world, evidence of your skills in the real world for your CV, and a very valuable opportunity to build connections. So a couple of points that I just want to expand on there. Having industry experience and skills as an academic is really important. Often we see now that on academic roles, there is an engagement requirement for an academic role. And so coming into a position having pre-existing industry connections is actually something that can be really beneficial when you're applying for academic jobs. And obviously industry experience is very important if you're looking at working in industry after your graduation. And I've highlighted evidence of your skills in the real world for your CV for a particular reason. So I was attending an industry engagement panel for the Center of Data Science. I think it was very early this year. And there were 4 industry partners on the panel. And every single one of them said that, yes, it's wonderful to have a research higher degree, whether it be MPhil or PhD. But when they receive that job application, they go, okay, this is great. This person is, highly qualified and highly academic, but how do I know? how do I know that they can do the job that they're applying for? And so undertaking a HDR internship is actually a really great way to have that evidence on your CV when you're applying for jobs after graduation, to say, this is a skill set that I've acquired during my PhD or my MPhil, and this is how I've demonstrated and I can evidence the application of my skill set when you're applying for positions. And the last thing I would say is that it's an opportunity to build connections. I would say, I don't have the exact data, so I don't want to quote you a percentage, but we do have quite a number of students who find employment through their HDR internships, and it is really a fabulous way to build connections. I think every student that I've helped undertake an internship says, I got to meet so many people, both in my field and outside my field, and now I have this really rich and diverse network, and that's really crucial as well. So again, I'd love to ask you a question now and say, what sectors could you use your research skills to work in after graduation? Because sometimes you think it's just in your discipline area, but hopefully, as you can see, that HDR internships actually offer a really they can offer an interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary experience. And thank you to everyone who's put their thoughts into the chat of wanting to work with businesses or government, non-government, and being open to others. And I think that that's also a really great place to be, is just being open to the types of organizations that you're going to work with. So thanks for letting me know, and feel free to put in the chat what sectors you think you could use your research skills in to work in after graduation, and that will really help as well. Now, the other reason to really consider undertaking a HDR internship is that the facts, and I'm not sharing these to dissuade you from applying for academic jobs at all, but the fact is that around 60% of PhD graduates will find work outside academia after graduation. And so beyond the professional requirement for academics to have that industry engagement experience that I just spoke about before, the other reason is you really want to be able to diversify your individual portfolio so that you can apply for skills both in academia and industry, because the results indicate that it's most likely PhD graduates will go on to work outside of academia after graduation. And at QUT, we feel really passionately that we want to be able to prepare you for that. So that's another reason to think about undertaking a HDR internship. And one thing I wanted to share with you are just these figures that came from the post-act COVID impact report at the end of 2022. So you can actually see in the graph on the left-hand side that during COVID, academic positions dropped down, which of course we all expected them to. But you can see that by the end of 2021, the number of academic jobs that were being advertised was actually less than the start of January 2019, and fewer job numbers overall compared to the graph on the right of non-academic research jobs. And you can see that from the start of January 19 to then the end of 2021, yes, it had some peaks and troughs, but it's at a very, very similar level. And then the quantity, the volume of the jobs that were being offered are obviously a lot higher. So I just wanted you to bear that graph in mind. And I think that's one of the main reasons to undertake a HDR internship, so that you have that experience to then be able to apply for jobs in industry after your degree. All right, so what is a HDR internship? Well, it's a 3 to 6 month project with an industry partner, and now we know that that can be businesses, governments, and etc. And the project is between you, the HDR student, an academic mentor, and I'll talk a little bit more about the academic mentor's role a little bit later, and the industry partner. So it's a separate project from your thesis project, and the industry owns the IP just of your internship project. It can be a standalone project with an industry partner, or it could be part of a larger grant or research collaboration. So for instance, one of the research centers at QUT, the Center for Future Enterprise, often they have larger research projects that are being conducted, and they will engage HDR interns as a part of that. So that's one option to do it, or it could be a standalone project, and we have many, many, many of those. If you're undertaking the internship during your candidature, then you're enrolled in the HDR Internship Shell Unit, IFN 004, which effectively doesn't really do this, but kind of pauses your candidature. So it means that you can completely dedicate yourself to the internship project. And during that time, it means that your scholarship payments are also paused. However, the internship projects are funded by the industry partner. So you receive an internship scholarship in lieu of your normal scholarship, so that you're still receiving fortnightly stipends throughout the internship. And I have to say, at QUT, we're very lucky to have it set up in this way. I've worked with a number of Australian universities over the last couple of years to talk about how they run their HDR internship programs. And a lot of Australian universities don't have a mechanism for students to be funded. They have to take a leave of absence to be able to do it. So we're really in a great position that we have such a robust program here. And in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, you can see that I've also put the eligibility criteria. So just have a look at that, depending on which degree that you're coming from. And you'll notice that what they all have in common is that you need to have completed 6 months of full-time equivalent study, and then also one of your milestones. So for PhD students, that's a stage 2, and for MPhil students, that's a research project proposal. And I've just had a very quick look in the chat, and thank you for putting your thoughts into the chat about the different sectors that you could apply your research skills in to undertake a HDR internship. It's a great place to start to have a broad overview of what sectors that you could go into. And I really appreciate that you're all thinking broadly and not keeping it too narrow. So that's great. Now, in the previous slide, I mentioned that you're also supported by an academic mentor during your HDR internship. So this can be your HDR supervisor, or it could also be another QUT academic staff member who has expertise relevant to the internship project. Some students like to pick someone other than their supervisor, purely because it's a great networking opportunity, and it then exposes them to a whole new range of academic staff at QUT and their respective industry connections. So you can think about what's going to be the best fit for you. The mentor, they assist with developing and vetting the project. We want to make sure that it's reasonable and feasible for you within the time frame. And the academic mentors, so if you are speaking to your supervisor about being an academic mentor, you can let them know that it's incentivized, and there is information on what incentives are available for academic mentors on HiQ. Okay, so how to secure an internship? There are 2 main ways that you can go about this. So the first way is that you can apply for existing HDR internship opportunities that are listed on our HiQ site. These come from obviously QUT's HDR internship program, where we've undertaken business development with industry partners to find opportunities. However, they can also come from our approved third-party provider, HDR Intern. So you might see internships via HDR Intern that are listed on our site, and you're very welcome to apply for them as well. And sometimes they can also come from other areas. So for instance, there's a summer a National Library parliamentary program and things like that that might have internship opportunities. So they can come from a range of sources, and they're listed on HiQ. However, I would say that only a very small portion of our students engage with those internships. And I would say maybe 60 to 70% of students self-source their own internship. So if you walk away with anything from this session, let me emphasize that again. I think self-sourcing your own internship is how most students find their internship opportunities. And also it means that you have more control. You don't have to sit back and just wait for something to land in your lap that might be suitable for you, because chances of that happening are quite slim. And this way you can actually use your networking skills, your pitching skills, and you can go and find an internship opportunity that suits you. So I would really recommend thinking about sourcing your own internship. And we have another workshop called Self-Sourcing a HDR Internship. If you haven't come along to that, I would recommend that you do at some stage, because we take you through a sort of a guideline on how to approach industry partners, and we prepare you in that way. And also we have an eGrad School module, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the workshop. But the eGrad School module is free for all QUT students, and it's called Preparing for Your HDR Internship. And in that module, we spend a lot of time on self-sourcing an internship. So I would really recommend that you enroll in that module. It'll be happening again in semester 1, 2024. It's 5 weeks with me, and I can help you prepare for your HDR internship experience. Now, a couple of students had said that they really want to know the process and what's involved in a HDR internship. So here we go, strap yourself in. So this process is if you are applying for one of the existing HDR internship opportunities listed on the HiQ site. You start by applying for it on HiQ. We then do an internship eligibility check. So that box that I talked about a couple of slides back about completing 6 months full-time equivalent study and a milestone, we check for those things. So that's what we do here. Then your application is sent to the industry partner. If they think you're a good fit, then they'll shortlist you for an interview with the industry partner. You then work with myself or my colleague in finalizing the internship agreement. There'll be a few emails back and forth, some paperwork to sign, and we finalize your internship agreement. And then complete internship pre-requirements. So we send you a link excuse me, for a module, a short module that you need to complete online, which will prepare you for undertaking your internship. And this takes about an hour. Then you start your internship with the industry partner. During the internship project, we do require that you conduct mid and final internship presentations. So midway point with your industry partner, your academic mentor, and myself to let us know how you're going on the project. And then there's also the final internship project as well. There's a couple of post-internship requirements that we send to you, nothing major. And you complete the post-internship survey, and then you receive your HDR internship completion certificate. So that's the process of if you're applying for an existing opportunity that's listed on the HiQ site. And this is the process if you are self-sourcing an internship. So you'll see everything in green and blue is the same. So I won't go through that again, but it's just really these first 3 points that are a little bit different, where you would identify a potential industry partner yourself or in consultation with your supervisor, or perhaps you've been given a contact through another academic at QT. So you're identifying a potential industry partner. We then encourage you to form a relationship with that industry partner. And if you come to the self-sourcing workshop or enroll in the eGrad School module, the way that we recommend that you do that is to actually request to conduct what we call an informational interview with the industry partner. It's about half an hour. It can be done virtually or in person, and it's an opportunity for you to get to know the organization and also for the organization to get to know you. Because if you're cold calling or cold emailing industry partners and saying, hi, I'd like an internship with you, the chances are they're going to say no. So this step is actually really crucial to form a relationship with the industry partner before you ask for an internship opportunity, because then they get to know you, they get to know your skill set and the value that you can contribute to their organization. So that's why we recommend this step first before you pitch the internship to the industry partner. And again, if you'd like to know more about those, feel free to come along to the self-sourcing and internship workshop or enroll in the eGrad School module. So just a little bit more information on the self-sourcing and internship. As I've mentioned in the workshop, we take a deep dive into those first 3 steps and also in the eGrad School module. So normally I have a date for you for the next workshop, but seeing as they're happening next year, please keep an eye out on the GRED newsletters and you'll see when the next one is available. There's also some information on our HiQ site that you can consult about self-sourcing and internship in the meantime. And also feel free to email us at hdr.intern for what we call the self-sourced form. And this is once you have an industry partner, once you've completed those first 3 steps, you have an industry partner, formed a relationship with them, you've pitched an internship to them and they said yes, then you can ask them to complete the self-sourced form, and then I can work with you from there to be able to finalize your internship. There's also, we have a careers educator in GRED, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But Karen conducts informational interview research workshops. So I would highly recommend attending one of those as well, and keep an eye out for the GRED newsletters to find out when the next one is. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, whoa, okay, Susan, that was a lot, and I might need some skills to be able to identify an industry partner or pitch an internship to them. So I just want to let you know it's okay, and there are plenty of resources available for you through QT that can help you upskill if you feel that you need it. So one of them is Employ Your Ability, and there are so many different modules. You can see here, I've got a few on the screen, you know, some of them are 30 minutes, some of them are an hour, but different modules about strengthening your connections or opening doors for connections, things that could actually be really useful. So Ivy's just put the link in the chat for them, and I would recommend having a look at them if you feel that, okay, I might need to brush up on my networking skills to be able to self-source my own internship. And I mentioned the internship presentations, so just a little bit more info on those. The mid one is conducted obviously midway through. The final internship is normally in the final week of your internship project. And both presentations are conducted virtually. You ask your industry supervisor, your academic mentor, and either myself or a member of the GRED team to come along. And it's a really lovely opportunity for you to also reflect on not just how the project has gone, but how you have developed through the internship as well. And we'll hear Audrey speak quite soon about her professional development experience with the Office of the Queensland Chief Scientist through her HDR internship. And then lastly, the completion certificate. So once that you've done your internship project and we've completed all the internship requirements, you get given this beautiful certificate, and you're welcome to share it on LinkedIn. We encourage you to do so. This is, if you remember back to all of those slides ago where I had that one piece highlighted in orange on being able to evidence your research skills to an industry partner, this is something that is that evidence for you. So once you've completed your internship, you get this certificate, and it's something that you can have on LinkedIn, you can include in your CV to be able to say to industry partners, here's the evidence that I have applied my research skill set to a real world project. And that's really important to be able to have that evidence. Okay, I think you have probably heard a lot from me, and now I would really like to introduce Audrey to chat about her internship experience. Audrey, I'm going to stop sharing my slides, and you're very welcome to share your slides.
Thanks, Susan. Let me go back to the beginning. So I am I've just finished my PhD in the School of Chemistry and Physics. So towards the end of my degree, I was looking to find an internship, kind of to apply my skills elsewhere. So I met with Susan actually, initially to kind of find out what sort of opportunities are available. So I was initially looking at self-sourcing an internship. And then I actually found this internship that was advertised by the HDR Internships team with the Office of the Queensland Chief Scientist. And the process was pretty straightforward. I filled out the application form that is online. I think it was downloaded. And, vetted by Susan. And then I had an interview with the Office of the Queensland Chief Scientist team. So that was about 2 members of staff there, and there's those competency questions. And then I had to do a short written test because this internship was all about science communication, particularly written science communication. And once, I was chosen, then there was a contract that Susan had worked together with the team to put together, which kind of detailed the kind of projects and things I would have to do in the internship with some sort of timeline. So it was kind of clear for me what I was getting myself into. And yeah, it was pretty straightforward. Susan's great, and it was all a pretty smooth process. So when I first started the internship, I had some kind of goals that I wanted to achieve, and it was mainly around written science communication, because as scientists, we obviously, or researchers, should I say, we write papers, we write articles, and that's a really particular kind of writing style. But it's really important for the work we do to be understood by the broader audience and the public. So it's kind of breaking down that sort of complex language into language that can be easily understood by everyone. And that actually kind of goes beyond the sort of science writing that we do in our PhDs. This can also help you in your grant writing skills, because it's actually how to communicate effectively. And I also wanted to develop networking skills to kind of, get myself out there and meet new people, that sort of thing like that. But during the internship process, as I was kind of, I think at the halfway point, I kind of thought I would like to actually explore what life outside academia might look like for me. So there was actually opportunities that I got in the internship to actually explore that goal. So the Office of the Queensland Chief Scientist, they are involved in leading science strategy across Queensland. So that's science policy, science strategy. And then they're also involved in increasing engagement of science participation in Queensland. So this is communicating with the public, getting them interested in science and involved in science. And they're actually involved in promoting Queensland science. So that's whether the science of academia or industry, kind of helping people know what is happening in Queensland and the sort of outstanding and amazing science in Queensland. So I've got here a picture of the current, should I say, Queensland Chief Scientist, Professor Kerry Wilson, who's also from QT. And I actually had 3 projects during my internship. So there was a sort of a National Science Week project, a Young Tall Poppy Science Award, and case studies on Queensland Award winners, which is where a lot of my science writing was going to be built. So for the National Science Week project, this was really to assist the government's department. They have a dedicated social media team to actually create some posts and promote National Science Week events. So for me, this was my first opportunity to build some skills that I wasn't actually going to be aware that I'd be building. So for me, calling people on the phone is not usually something I do. So it was, my first day on the job. There was a list of scientists who were going to be doing activities during National Science Week, and my job was to first call them and find out about the activities. And for me, that was an important skill to build. Now I feel comfortable speaking on the phone, and that kind of call where they're not expecting it, so it kind of feels like it's a bit of a cold call, to actually build those relationships over the phone. And that's kind of one of the key points I found in this internship. Building relationships with people is key for success and your outcomes. It really matters with the connections you're building with people. So also part of this project, I actually got to put my research skills to use, because a lot of times you'd find information about a science event and it was really, jargon heavy, because obviously the event information that you would find was not actually for advertising. This was like for a grant or a research proposal that they were putting together. So you then had to take that jargon heavy and kind of change it into layman terms that you could then give that information to the science communication team, science communication, the comms team, and they then were able to use those words and the photos that I found to advertise these events. So then the next project that I was working on was a Meet a Scientist in Schools project. So I was responsible for basically running this. And this project is basically about getting scientists into schools to kind of inspire the next generation, to help them find out about where a career in STEM could take them, what it means to be a scientist, who is a scientist even, and so breaking down those barriers and perceptions. And also it's an opportunity for the scientists to actually get some experience about talking about their work to a non-scientific audience. Like, could you imagine explaining your PhD project to a 5-year-old? What would you say? What words would you use? So for me, this was another opportunity once again to develop my communication skills, because I have to communicate with these scientists as the one stakeholder, but I have to also communicate with schools. So what I was doing was basically finding schools, finding scientists and pairing them, matching them up, for kind of facilitating these visits. And what you learn is kind of how to influence people and how to communicate, because you really want to communicate the important points to that person. What does this person need to know for them to buy into this project, or to want to be a part of this project? So that's what I kind of learned through that project, is how to put your best foot forward. And it was actually really amazing to see the success of that project, and students saying, wow, I'd love to be a scientist after this, and the scientists also having a changed perception of also wanting to communicate their science to a broader audience and the benefits that brings to them. So my second project was the Young Tall Poppy Awards. And so this is actually awards that celebrate the excellence of researchers in Queensland, particularly their research excellence, but also their attempts to engage the community. So it's that thing that Susan was talking about, the importance of engagement. So it's bringing both of those aspects together. And for me, I really developed project management skills. Well, I'm going to say I had a chance to apply my project management skills, because during your higher research degree, we are actually managing our projects. We're managing our masters or our PhDs from beginning to completion. So you're the project manager. So this was an opportunity for me to actually apply that in another setting. And I was responsible from the very beginning of these awards to the very end. It was all in my hands. And there are a lot of moving parts in this event. So there are a lot of things to think about. You're thinking about the finance, the catering, the stakeholders, the guests. And a lot of times you're working on each of those sort of mini projects within a big project all at the same time and making sure it all comes together. So for me, it was a chance to really show off my organization skills because it took a lot of organizing. It took a lot of being aware of deadlines, meeting those deadlines. And sometimes you'd realize that something unexpected is happening and you have to get a result in like maybe 2 days. So you're really learning to be flexible and actually turn out results really quickly. So that was a really good opportunity for me. And it was also a really good opportunity to network because I got to meet all these amazing scientists who had won awards and hear their stories and kind of reflect on my process and where I've been and where I'd like to go as well. And interestingly, one of these award winners was actually started their academic journey as a chemist. And now they completely don't work in chemistry at all. They're still researching, but it's not in chemistry. So it's kind of, even where you are now, you might not end up there in the end because it's kind of like a meandering, winding road, which is pretty cool. And then the final project I was working on is case studies on award Queensland scientists. So this was really about interviewing these scientists. They had previously won awards and finding out what they're doing now, sort of how they got to where they are, and their kind of hopes for the future, so we could inspire the future generation. And this was really an opportunity for my science writing skills to shine. I have an example here of a piece I wrote for the website for the Office of the Queen's Chief Scientist. And I wanted to kind of advertise the case studies that I had written and another intern had written also before me. And we have about 30 words to make an attractive sort of piece that would make people want to click on through the website. So this is something that I'd written just kind of hopefully to make people ask questions and kind of click through the website. And then also in the internship, I actually got a lot of other opportunities. So I've kind of been a bit vague because I can't really say exactly what I was doing or what these tasks were. But everyone on the team was just so supportive. And, people like, so what's your goals after this internship? What do you want to know? What would you like to find out? So I got more opportunities to do other kinds of science writing, particularly, in the government space, what that might look like, but also that's going to help me in the future, even to write official sort of documents. That skills will help me. But also I've learned about email marketing. So the kind of concepts that you need to think about when you're trying to advertise to someone. And this is where my mentor really shined because she's a science communication expert. And I'm like, hi, Michelle, I really would like to, see some increased engagement with this email. What are some strategies I can apply to actually kind of see that increased engagement? And she'll tell me, okay, have you thought about this? This kind of theory you got to think about. So I would write another email. I'm like, hey, 10% increase, or whatever that number was. So it was a really opportunity for me to see that in action. But then also on the networking side and exploring life outside academia, the team was so helpful. They were, for me, they were kind of like, what would you like to see in the government? I didn't even realize when I first started that research actually happened in the government. So if you really love research, you don't have to go into academia. The government industry, they're all researching, they're all investigating. So there are opportunities there. So just kind of seeing that aspect as well. And then also for me, it was kind of a mind-broadening experience, kind of seeing how government interacts with academia and also other industries, how they all come together. And a lot of times, I was invited along to a meeting and you're seeing how all these parties kind of come together and you see the broader opportunities. So I don't actually have to, because I'm a medicinal chemist, I don't have to work in a pharmaceutical company developing, medicines. I don't have to work in academia sort of researching these medicines. I can actually work in government thinking about the policy of how we can actually, make Queensland capability better in this space, or I could work in a company that's kind of engaging, researchers or government, sort of lobbying for better policies, or completely removed again, I'm just applying my research skills to a completely new area. So for me, it was kind of really useful. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation, Audrey. I love that there's so many skills or opportunities to demonstrate existing skills that you had. You know, you mentioned research communication, engagement, stakeholder management, project management, organizational, networking skills, and it's just fantastic that you've been able to experience all of them. And I also really like that that overview that you just did at the end, where you sort of thought, okay, before the internship, maybe these were just your only sort of employment options after graduation, but now that you can see so many other options for you as well. And I always think that in itself is really the most valuable thing that comes from the internship, because you can see what other opportunities are available for you and what other directions that you could go in. If I can ask you one last question though, because I know that we've got a lot of students here who are thinking about doing an internship. If you could go back to the Audrey that I first met on our first Zoom call, and give her any one piece of advice that obviously our other HDR students could benefit from today, what would you want your earlier self to know, or what advice would you tell yourself?
I think I would tell myself, I think I would, well, to be honest, I did do it, but I would tell myself to probably consider it earlier if you can. Obviously, if I've thought about this at the end of my degree, and it was kind of like a last minute rush to say, let's get an internship. So if you're kind of prepared to kind of build those relationships, because definitely if you're going to self-source, you're going to need a bit of time to do that. So just give yourself that time. But also, I would suggest to get involved in other things that GRED are doing, because it will help you to source that internship, because you are building a network and you're meeting people through that as well.
That's such great advice. Thank you so much for your presentation. And if you're happy to hang around until the end, till our Q&A session, just if anyone's got any questions for you, we can come back and ask you questions then. But thank you so much. I'm going to share my slides again. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Pardon me. And so now that we've heard about the whole, what an industry is, what a HDR internship is, the whole process of what's involved, how to secure one. Now let's get into so that first option of how to apply for an advertised internship. So all of those are listed on the HiQ site, and they have the application deadlines that are there as well. And there's also instructions on how to apply, because sometimes different industry partners have different requirements on how to apply. So that's your first port of call, having a look on the HiQ site. And then I would also really recommend consulting either the PDF or the video of how to nail your HDR internship application. Internships that we advertise are really competitive, and you want to be able to put your best foot forward. We always receive multiple applications from students. There's multiple applicants who are shortlisted and interviewed. So really treat your internship application like a job application, and take the time to make sure that your application is relevant, and I'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. So relevant to what the industry partner wants, and just puts yourself in the best light as to why you would be the best pick for the internship that you're applying for. So sometimes what I see in internship applications is that they're very cut and paste, and look, I get it. we've all done it, you know, for a job application or something where we're running out of time, or, you know, there's competing demands, and you copy and paste. But what I've seen is that this really isn't the best approach when applying for an internship. My best piece of advice that I can give you is to know what the industry partner wants. They give you all of the information in the expression of interest form that you can see for the advertised internship opportunity. So really look carefully through that and make notes on what they're looking for. And then learn the language that they use. You know, sometimes you can just pick up on keywords that people say, and then using it back to them as a way to build rapport really quickly. And then that will strengthen your application as well. So if they use a keyword like, let's say in Audrey's case, you know, perhaps Office of Queensland Chief Scientist, I can't remember exactly, you know, their language, but maybe they said, you know, we're looking for someone with project management skills. To be able to use those keywords back is going to reassure the industry partner that you have the skills and that you're capable of undertaking the internship project. And then when you move into the internship, I really recommend that you use the STAR method. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So we can actually see, just even from Audrey's presentation, when she was describing, you know, say perhaps the Young Tall Poppy awards, Young Tall Poppy awards, you know, she described, okay, this is what I was tasked with, this is how I went about doing it, and this was the result of it. And so that's what they're really looking for in the interview, that you can point to other experiences and give demonstrable evidence that you have done it before. And if you haven't done it before, then you can find another situation that is sort of similar and then transfer your experience into that to show them how you would be suitable. QT also has something called Big Interview, and I think Ivy's just put the link to the chat. This is a really fantastic way to brush up on your interview skills. If you haven't done an interview for a while, you can feel really rusty. And so I'd recommend, if you haven't done one in a while, have a refresher on Big Interview, and then also refine and improve as you go. I remember one of my HDR students, he applied for one internship. He wasn't successful in that one. He reached out to me and asked for some feedback, and I gave him some pointers. Then he applied for another internship, and he applied that feedback and those pointers and changed his interview style a little bit, where I think in the first interview, he'd just spent way too long talking about his research. It was a 30-minute interview, and he'd spent about 15 minutes talking about his research, and it didn't really give the industry partner the opportunity or the time to ask the questions that they wanted to know that he could fulfill the internship project. And so one of the pointers that I gave him was just to provide shorter, more concise responses. And he did that in the second interview, and he was chosen as the second candidate. So if you're not selected from your first interview, please don't despair. You're welcome to reach out to the industry partner and the GRED team for feedback. We'll help you, and take that feedback and refine and improve as you go. Then interviewing for an advertised internship. So it could be in person, the interview, or it could be online. Most of them are normally online now. And I would recommend that you prepare, as I said, by freshening up, by using Big Interview. There's also our careers educator, Karen. She runs sessions called Career Competitive Interview Strategies. So just like Audrey said, where engaging in other GRED offerings is going to help improve your overall, let's say, capacity to apply and interview and undertake an internship. This is one of those opportunities. So please watch out for the GRED newsletters and, make a note that that's something to do in 2024. And a few basic interview skills that I would like to share with you. Normally, I kind of sit in on most of the interviews because sometimes students have questions about the HDR internship program that the industry partner isn't capable of asking. So I see a lot of interviews. And these would be my top tips based on what I've seen. Please join the Zoom early. Making sure that you're punctual creates a really good impression. Also make sure that you have adequate lighting for your Zoom interview. It's really hard to build rapport if the industry partner can't see you. Organize to be in a quiet location. It can be really distracting if there's background noise going on and the industry partner can't hear your responses properly. And please wear professional clothing, at least from the waist up. You can have your pajama bottoms or your board shorts on underneath, but having, pardon me, having professional clothing on the top, again, will help to create a great impression. Body language on Zoom. Hopefully I've been a great example of this today. Good posture, sitting up straight, using hand gestures and smiling. It's all ways that help you build rapport with a brand new audience. Speak up and give concise answers. And I just gave you an example of why that's important, to give concise answers. And also be confident. Oh, this is something I see all the time. We have just an amazingly talented HDR cohort at QUT, but often HDR students, especially I think if you're quite early in candidature, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think sometimes they feel like, well, you know, I'm just doing my literature review. I haven't really done anything yet. So they feel like they don't have the confidence. But believe me, you're doing an MPhil or you're doing a PhD, you're incredibly talented, and please be confident and sell your skills and your experience appropriately, and don't sell yourself short. Be really proud of what you've done so far. So they would be my top tips. And then know what you have that's relevant to the industry partner as well. So you can see here, I've kind of put them in order. Having relevant skills, that's top priority for the industry partner. Having relevant education, you can even look back on some of your undergraduate unit outlines to see, you know, perhaps some of the learning outcomes and things that you've taken away from your education. Also relevant employment experience. So this is a big one. That example that I just gave you before, where I had one student apply for an internship, he didn't get it, but he got the second one. Another reason why he didn't get the first one was because we had another HDR intern apply for it. It was an AI project at the Queensland Art Gallery. And this particular student was an international student, and in his home country, he had actually previously worked in an art gallery. And so that was relevant employment experience. And Queensland Art Gallery, obviously he had the skills, he had the education that they were looking for, but it was like an added bonus that he had worked in an art gallery previously and, you know, knew some of the language and knew some of the culture that can, like the workplace culture that can happen in an art gallery. So definitely make mention of relevant employment experience. Then your research topic. And as I used that example before, I know that it's a safe space for you to talk about it. But just keep it concise, and also to keep it accessible to a non-discipline audience. And if you feel like this is something that perhaps you might need some assistance with, you're very welcome to register for the 2024 3-minute thesis competition. You will get lots and lots of coaching from me on developing your research communication skills and how to present your research to a general audience. And even Audrey mentioned that that was something that she developed in her internship with the Office of the Queensland Chief Scientist as well. And then prepare for the interview by making a short list of examples that you can put into that STAR method. So examples of, you know, skills that, that the industry partner is looking for, so that you can talk about them in the interview. Now, if one question that you often get is what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And if you're like, Susan, I have no idea. I would recommend actually consulting with a character strength survey so that you know how to speak about your skill set to a prospective industry partner or employer. I will say that the VIA Character Strength Survey, QUT isn't affiliated with them in any way. We're not getting any incentives to promote them. At GRED, we just think this is a particularly good survey. You don't have to use this one. You could use another one. If you find another one that you think is better, please go for it. But it's just an option that taking a survey like this may help you discover some of your strengths that you can then discuss in interviews. Now, there's also the Australian Collaborative Education Network modules, or ACEN modules, such as preparing for your work integrated learning experience, understanding Australian workplace cultures, and I'll talk more about that one in the next slide. If you feel that you would also like some additional support and preparation for your internship, these are some great modules to consult. And I've also said big interview on this slide as well to practice your interviewing skills. So the understanding workplace cultures, this is I would say, we probably have on our internships maybe 70% international students undertaking them. And one thing that I often hear international students say at the end of their internship is, it was, especially if it's their first time working in an Australian workplace, they'll say one of the benefits that they gained from undertaking the internship was being exposed to an Australian workplace culture and, you know, being able to understand it. So if that's something that you're hoping to understand and that's a goal of yours before your internship, you can also undertake this module. They're all for free for QUT students, and it may help you prepare, and it may help you get more and achieve more from that goal of understanding an Australian workplace culture. Now, we're not done for additional supports yet. There's so much more. As I mentioned, we also have a careers educator, Karen, and there's HDR career support available for you. So keep an eye on the GRED newsletters for 2024. She'll be running lots of these webinars, job writing sessions, there's one-to-one appointments, and I would really encourage you to take up on some of these opportunities, because the skills that you're building for job applications are actually quite similar for internship applications and interviews. So they're transferable skills. They'll help you now while you're trying to find an internship, and they'll help you in the future when you're applying for jobs as well. And the last thing that I'll say is that developing your online brand is also a great place to start. So especially having a LinkedIn profile. If you don't have one already, I would highly recommend that you create one. It's going to help you with networking. It's going to help you consolidate some of your experiences. People can write recommendations for you. So if you don't have one, it's a create one. That's your homework for today. Okay, so that was the additional training and support. And what I want to leave you with before we get into the Q&A session is, there's been a lot of information today, a lot for you to take in. So let's just distill it down on where to start. What are the best next steps for you to take? So I would highly recommend reading through the HDR internship page on HiQ. It will consolidate a lot of the information that I've shared with you today. You can also submit your registration to the HDR Industry Engagement Program. This is a really great opportunity, because sometimes industry partners will reach out and they'll say, we need an intern next week. And so I will consult the Industry Engagement Program and see if there's any students in there who have registered that would be a good fit for the opportunity. So that's another way of potentially finding an internship. So I'd recommend that you do that. I would also recommend that you start a conversation with your supervisor. Pardon me. Start a conversation with your supervisor, because they may have networks and contacts in industry, and they could potentially introduce you to them, especially when you're self-sourcing, or they may also have other academic connections. and then you can be introduced to them and be exposed to their network and their contacts as well. Especially if you are looking at self-sourcing, and this is my next recommendation, to participate in that training of the self-sourcing workshop or the eGrad school module that I host, because having those conversations with supervisors and other academic staff, they're going to be really key to expanding your networks and helping you with the first step of identifying a potential industry partner. Then my next recommendation is to read the GRED emails. That's going to tell you about other workshops and offerings coming up that will help you. And then apply for internships. Even if you're not successful in the first one, you get the experience of applying, and then you can, as I said, get some feedback on your application, or get some feedback on how you went in your interview, and refine and improve as you go. And then if you haven't interviewed before, or you haven't interviewed for a while, I'd also recommend just brushing up on your interview skills on Big Interview. So this is the registration form for the HDR Industry Engagement Program. I'd recommend that you do it today. It will trigger an email to your supervisor. So 2 birds with 1 stone. That's how you can let them know that you're interested in taking an internship opportunity. And I've already spoken about that. And then these are the GRED emails. So there are emails that come from GRED about all of the GRED offerings. Please look at those, because you'll see some really great supports available with, say, perhaps some of the career workshops that are coming up. But then also this fabulous orange newsletter is sent every Tuesday with internship opportunities that are open and available for application. So this is how you find out about upcoming industry engagement training and offerings, and also internships that are currently open for application. So they are my recommendations on where to start. Now, before I move into the Q&A session, I would love if you can tell us what you thought of this session. Just as, like I said, taking feedback, you can refine and improve as you go. Ivy's put the link into the chat. It's a 1-minute quick and anonymous survey. I'd love to know what you thought went well about this session, what you loved, what you'd like to see more of. And while you're doing that very quick survey, this is the eGrad school that I mentioned in the workshop previously. There are a range of different modules that you can undertake, and some of them are really helpful for your HDR internship. Obviously, I run the Preparing for Your HDR Internship module, and you're very welcome to enroll in that. But there are other modules available, like project management skills, communication and collaboration, that are also really great to prepare for your HDR internship. So I would recommend, we've got the email address for our fabulous eGrad school coordinator, Ola, and I would also recommend that you have a look at the offerings and think about choosing a couple of modules that you would like to do for 2024. And hopefully I'll see you in the Preparing for Your HDR Internship module in semester 1 next year. So that brings us to the end of the workshop, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I would like to open for questions, and we had one question that has already come through the chat from Sagar. It was a great question. So it was when I was talking about self-sourcing and internship, and Sagar asked, are there any restrictions for self-sourced industry, like whether the industry should have a particular location or should have some minimum revenue, etc.? Such a great question. I'm so glad you asked it, Sagar. So the answer to that is we vet every industry partner, and we do have some criteria that we look for. It is quite easy to meet. And so I would say, as long as you are engaging with reputable organizations, it doesn't matter if they are, let's say, in a metro location in Australia, or if they're in a rural location in Australia, or if they're an international industry partner. We have facilitated international internships, both in person and remotely as well. And so that can be done. Minimum revenue, no, that's not a requirement. We do require that they have a certain level of, this is probably, it's too much detail at this point in time. We normally cover this at the agreement stage. But we do ask that they have a certain level of insurances, but that's in the agreement. You don't need to discuss that with the industry partner. I think if you're self-sourcing, the main thing to do is to identify a potential industry partner and then form a relationship with them by having an informational interview and have a chat about their organization and, you know, chat about yourself a little bit. And then once you've pitched the internship to them and they say, actually, yes, you know, we'd love to bring you on for a short-term project, then just reach out to me or the team and we'll talk you through the rest of the requirements there. So my short answer is yes, there's some requirements, but we'll walk you through it and just make sure that you're engaging with reputable organizations, and I'm sure it will be fine. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat. So Tara has said, can I do an internship that is not directly related to my master's? Fabulous question. So glad you asked that. Yes. Yes, you can. And I would say most of our internship projects aren't directly related to your specific research project that you're doing in your degree, but they might be relevant. I'll give you an example. I remember it was a couple of years ago, and we had a student and her research topic was on antimicrobial coatings on dentures. So when people are having teeth removed and implanted, I think that's the right word. So antimicrobial coatings. She ended up applying and undertaking an internship with a company that was developing antimicrobial floorings that could be used in, say, restaurants or places where food safety was a concern. And so she was able to, you know, it wasn't directly related to her research project, but it was relevant because she was able to transfer her skills and her knowledge and her experience from the antimicrobial coatings for the dentures to the coatings in the floorings. And I remember she has an interview as well. Ivy would have put the link in the chat of other HDR internship testimonials and videos that we have. And so you can check out that video on our external site. And I remember she said it was just something that she never ever even thought of, but it was actually quite easy to be able to translate her research skills and experience in that way. So short answer, yes, you can. It's ideal if it's relevant. And yes, I think, you know, doing a interdisciplinary or a transdisciplinary internship project is fabulous because it'll open you up to opportunities that maybe you never even considered for yourself. Are there any other questions? Oh, you're welcome. Are there any other questions either for me or also for the wonderful Audrey, who is still here with us? If you would like to hear anything about the student experience of undertaking an internship, are there any other questions that either of us can help with? And I will say as well, if you're anything like me, where sometimes you'll walk away from a workshop and then 2 hours later think, oh, I should have asked this question. If that happens to you, please feel free to email us at hdr.intern@qut.edu.au and I'll be happy to help you out. But if you have anything, any other questions now, let us know. Okay, Segar says, is the process tedious for the industry to get involved with QT if we as a student propose for the internship? And that's I love that question, Segar. That's really insightful. And the industry has never had an intern before. Okay, I'm gonna give you an example. So I We had previously done an internship with the Australian Academy of Sciences through HDR Intern, and they had not ever done an internship through our program previously until the start of this year, February, I think it was. And we developed an internship and I took them through the process. The feedback that I got for them was that it was surprisingly easy. So Sego, we've tried really, really hard to, not make it super tedious or bureaucratic or too administratively heavy. And I've had other industry partners say that the feedback that they've provided is that the process is really seamless. It's quite easy. And so, yeah, we make it as simple as possible. I think it's fine based on the industry partner feedback that we have. I hope that answers your question. But that's the Australian Academy of Sciences, which are, I thought it was fantastic feedback for them to say, oh, that was surprisingly wonderful and seamless and effortless. I think that speaks really highly of how much we've tried to refine our program and make it easy for industry partners. Really good question. Are there any other questions for me or for Audrey? Okay. Okay, another question. Is there a minimum time period? Yes, 3 months is the minimum. 6 months is the maximum. And also when you're working with potential industry partners to self-source an internship, and you're welcome to bring me into conversations with them as well. Give us a couple of months to set it up. It probably won't take that long, but I just normally say to industry partners, okay, once you're committed to hosting an internship, give us a couple of months to set it up. Yes, from applying and joining, yeah, about a 2-month period, Sagar. It could be shorter. It probably will be shorter. But I would say, yeah. But if you're self-sourcing, so between applying for an internship opportunity that's currently available and starting, yes, about a couple of months. But if you're self-sourcing, pardon me, that process of networking and finding prospective industry partners and doing informational interviews with them, that can take quite some time. And this is what Audrey was saying before as well. The earlier that you can start that process, the better. And I would start that process once you're 6 to 12 months in. Are there any other questions for me or for Audrey? Okay, I think we've come to the, okay, here we go. Is it okay to shoot you a direct email with, yes, absolutely. So let me put the email address. There we go. So if you have any queries or anything else that you want to chat with me about, feel free to send us an email here. And I'll be in touch and I'll be happy to help you out. You're welcome. Okay, well, I think that's probably the end of the questions. So thank you so much to everyone for joining. I hope you found this session valuable and you've walked out of it feeling more empowered and confident to go out and start applying or sourcing an internship opportunity for yourself. I'd also really like to thank Audrey for taking the time to share her experience, and also for Ivy for helping with putting all the links into the chat and everything. So thank you so much to everyone. Feel free to send us an email if you have any more questions or I can help further. Otherwise, go forth and find amazing HDR internship opportunities. And I look forward to helping you with them in the future. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Thank you.